Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the week. It is Monday, May 15th, 2023. Your Daily Detroit is back with what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. I'm Jer Stays, and joining me on the line is
Fletcher Sharpe.
So much to unpack, and I sometimes say that, but really, we have a ton of checklist items. I don't know if we're going to get to them all that we want to discuss. Busy weekend in sports, busy drama off the court, too, and let's jump into that first. We spent some time talking about the head coach search for the Pistons last week. 3 top candidates. Now I think we're down to 1 probable rumored top candidate, but then someone new in the mix, and it's because Mat Ishbia decided to get rid of Monty Williams at the end of the Suns season, and it has gotten people going, Monty's the guy that we want.
Yeah, given the fact that Monty Williams is coming off of 2 conference semifinals appearances and 1 NBA Finals appearance where he lost to also recently fired head coach Mike Budenholzer and the Milwaukee Bucks. People think that there's something there. I think Monty Williams would be a nice fit for Detroit, but I also think given the fact he's coming off of his best career coaching stretch ever, where he made the playoffs twice before he got to the Suns, I don't really see him coming to Detroit and try to resuscitate a new team. Yeah, there's some excitement around the Pistons, but also we have to realize and remember that they still are not there yet. They still have a lot of really great pieces that have not meshed together yet. Monty could be the coach to help them do that, but I don't really see why a 51-year-old, again, coming off his best coaching stretch in his young coaching career, why he would decide to say, okay, I'll take that challenge right now. Because all it's going to do is make him go back to the Monty Williams of New Orleans, who just has a young team and is there to grind it out, not win or compete. They're there just to get draft picks and then go from there. Why would he want to go do that back to his career again after being seen as, a NBA coach of the year? That makes not much sense to me.
There's a lot of people, though, and we've talked about it a bit, that think that the Pistons are just a couple of pieces away from the right thing. And I mean, there's only 3 real openings. You got the Clippers, you got the Bucks, and you got us. I feel like Milwaukee and Detroit, they're comparable kind of things as far as lifestyle goes. And I know it's different for coaches and players, but people like to live in nice places. I feel like Tom Gores, if he wants to pony up the cash, and I think that's going to be key to this, right? Because you only have so much time to make money. I think that if Tom Gores ponies up the cash, we have the chance to beat that out. If you like LA, it's hard to beat out the LA kind of thing. And he just was out west. So if you like that, I understand why, lifestyle wise, if you don't want to make a shift like that, all things being even. But I think if Tom Gores is willing to open up the pocketbook, I think we could beat out the Bucks.
I honestly don't think the Clippers is that great of a choice. I do know that they have an opening, but their team is very stuck. While they did make the playoffs, their team is so stuck around 2 stars, who one of whom is not always there, and the other one thinks he's bigger than he actually is.
So you think he's going to take the Bucks job?
I don't know. I mean, maybe he might if they come a calling. The Bucks have a better chance of making the NBA Finals than the Clippers do, in my opinion, because they still have a generational superstar who we all did not see coming in Giannis. They have a solid team. They have another all-star in Drew Holiday. They have a pretty dependable bench, albeit not the most dependable, in a conference that's, Eastern Conference is kind of strong, but the Bucks are one of the top teams, so it would make sense why you'd see that. Also, it's kind of weird. We mentioned Charles Lee last week, who's an assistant with the Bucks. The Bucks aren't looking at him at all, which is weird to me. It's another reason why I would not want him coaching my team. If your team that you're on is not looking at you and you're looking elsewhere, I'd ask a question, why aren't they looking at you? The players. Why don't you want to stay here? But whatever. I think given that, I think there's a decent chance he lands in Milwaukee. I think Monty would be a great coach for the Pistons. He would be a nice calming voice to be helpful in terms of trying to get the younger players involved. He's a former NBA player himself, so that's also very helpful. I don't see it. If it happens, I'll definitely be happy with it, but I can't see it.
Reports say that we're not going to see a decision until after the draft lottery because there's this one thing, right? There's one person you take.
Last time Ben Wallace was the person who was representing the Pistons at the draft lottery. They got the number 1 overall pick, so Ben Wallace is doing it again. So a lot of people are saying, oh, no, Ben Wallace is there, Pistons got it, which I just don't think the NBA offices really want the Pistons to do well. That's just me. I've been a Pistons fan for many, many years. They're one of the few teams that I cover that I actually outwardly enjoy. And there have been many times where they should have gotten the number 1 overall pick, and somehow Cleveland ends up with it again. So since Cleveland's actually doing well, they can't have the number 1 overall pick. But I'm looking at other teams who would be a very good story, quote unquote, for the number 1 overall pick.
Are you thinking that they put their finger on the scale?
You're telling me when LeBron James, the number 1 overall draft pick from Ohio, all of a sudden gets to go to Cleveland? And then when LeBron needs a sidekick to be a player, all of a sudden they get another number 1 overall draft pick to get Kyrie Irving? Are you sure? Like, what would make people pay more attention to this thing? And I think sometimes, like, they might say, oh, this might be, like, I like the way the NFL does it, and I like the way other teams do it, where it's like, hey, we will, whoever has the worst record goes. I know why in NBA you can't do that, because teams will tank horribly. So the lottery kind of makes it where, like, oh, well, you tanked and lost 70 games this year. Guess what? You got the 3rd overall pick instead of the 1st. Don't you feel stupid? That's what happened with the 76ers for so long, is they tanked really badly, hoping to get the number 1 overall pick over and over and over. And they got like some top 5 picks, but they never really got the number 1 best overall player. So like, yeah, it kind of screwed them for a few years. Because, yeah, you can see teams are trying to lose on purpose. So I like the fact the lottery's there for that reason. But, like, it always makes me skeptical, because you could then, say, well, we want them to have it. So maybe this other team has a 30% chance of being number 1 overall. Well, they'll just have to be okay with the 4th overall pick. So I don't know. The lottery always makes me, like, anxious, because you see what you could project. You see the people putting mathematics into it, and it's like, okay, well, if we don't get the 7th pick, we have a bigger chance at the 3rd. And if we don't get the 3rd, we have a big chance at the 2nd, but not a big one at the 1st. So, I don't know. It's a lot of numbers, and just, it makes me feel like that clip from Doug, where Doug Funny have the number swirl on his head, he starts screaming. Like, that's how I feel watching the numbers involved with the NBA draft. It makes me feel like I'm going to explode.
You were at Ford Field over the weekend, Michigan Panthers. Not a great performance, but a lot of energy around it. A lot of discussion around the Panthers. Unfortunately, the first 2 games are not like the last 2 games.
They were really excited to get to Ford Field and get to Detroit for the Panthers, because when all the games were being held in Alabama last year, the most followed team by far from distance was the Michigan Panthers by like a wide margin, which honestly was a little bit surprising. Not as much, given the fact the Lions were not good that year, but people were surprised just because, like, oh, they could be something.
For me, it's like when we had Matt Friedman on the show a while ago. Maybe maybe 2 years ago at this point, where we were talking about, people are like, oh, soccer, oh, hockey, oh, basketball. Like, the reality is like Detroit, and I think this whole Panthers thing shows it too. And I don't mean just in the like attendance at the game. I mean the conversation. I mean the buzz around it that I see, the feedback is that this town is football crazy. Like, you and I could go ahead and put some helmets on and throw a football between each other. I wonder if people would watch it at this point, because we are so into the gridiron here in Metro Detroit.
It's one thing if, like, you only have 40 people and they boo and it's kind of like, sounds like a whatever. But it's another thing to have, like, the lower bowl decently filled and people boo, which is, like, not great that they're booing. But the fact there's that many people to where you can actually feel the boos, like, lift the hair off the back of your neck, it's like, okay, well, this is pretty well attended. Like, that's not great, but also that is good, because people are here, and they're here after, for now, a 3rd straight loss, and they're still here. Like, they could, in theory, be like, we're done doing this. But maybe it wasn't as well attended as the first game in Detroit, which I expected it to, because it was like an extra little anxiety and buzz. But, like, I expect this next weekend, and then the last game at the last week of the season, I expect the game to still be decently attended, because, like, people want to see this. It's also, like I've said a few times off air to people, it's a good way to see a few names that you've, seen play college ball but haven't seen in a while. Like Josh Butler for Michigan State and Delano Hill for Michigan play for the Panthers. Pittsburgh had a former Michigan State tight end play. Last week, New Jersey Generals quarterback DeAndre Johnson played for Eastern Mississippi and was on Last Chance U was on the team. So, like, you see names you haven't seen in a while. It's a good way to see that and kind of refresh and be like, oh, wow, what? That's crazy.
But why were they booing?
I don't know what happened the first 2 games away, where, like, they were just, Josh Love was completing 97% of passes during a game, setting records. They were able to run the ball and kind of got crazy. And these last 3 games, our offensive line has just shriveled. Like, Josh Love in 3 games, I've watched him have, like, 11 passes batted down, which is really bad. That's at some point, like to the point to where the first game it happened, they switched out for Carson Strong, the backup, who's 6'3", over Josh Love, who is 6 foot. Then the next game, they did the same, switched him out for a bit longer. And the last game, they switched him out for a bit long. And I'm like, look, at this point, maybe Carson Strong's just your starter. And like, it's not even the fact he's better, it's just he's taller. And if you're not going to make the assessment or the change to like, maybe even have Joshua throw the ball from further away, maybe put the taller guy in so that the ball's not getting batted down, because literally there's nothing you can do to stop it. You can't hold people's arms down. So if you're just going to let them bat the ball down, like you're going to kill your own play and you're just going to hear the people boo the entire time. They got off to a nice start. They had a 75-yard punt return by Isaiah Hyman, and they scored off that possession. And then after that, it kind of just stagnated. But yeah, it's a great atmosphere. If you have kids, they'll definitely love it, because they're always giving away T-shirts, giving away a bunch of stuff to the kids. They do their best to honor people in the stands. If you're good for wanting to be on the camera, the cameras will definitely find you. It's a great atmosphere. It's just it's unfortunate on the field they're not winning yet at home.
Let's talk a little bit of soccer, but first, we're not going to talk about Detroit City. No. We're going to be talking about an international friendly that is coming to Comerica Park. I personally am excited about it. Crystal Palace is going to be playing Sevilla. I think this is great to see international friendlies. One of the things that I miss most is like the lack of international friendlies for Le Rouge. I know that like they're not going to play Crystal Palace, right? Like I just know that isn't going to be a thing. So I guess the second best thing is this, and I feel like this is going to be very well attended. This is going to be on July 30th.
Yeah, the last time I had a game at Comerica, I got lucky enough to go there, part of the ICC International Continental Competition, or whatever that last C is, I'm not sure. It was PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, against AS Roma of Italy. And it was a pretty well-attended game. You had a lot of fans who wanted to see it. All thing I didn't really like necessarily was it was kind of, because it's in a baseball stadium, it was kind of a weird fit. They'll be doing it across the outfield because that's the most grass area where there's no interruptions of anything. If you get an outfield seat or a first base, like, good. But if you get like a third base, like, it's going to be rough for you to see the seats. But you'll be able to see some of the stars of Crystal Palace, some of the stars of Sevilla. Sevilla is a really good Spanish team. Crystal Palace is not the best team from London, but they are perennially in the Premier League. And for those who don't know, their Selhurst Park is the place where they shoot Ted Lasso. Crystal Palace is where Ted Lasso is hosted. That's the reason why you don't really see Crystal Palace on the show.
Gotcha.
But yeah, no, it should be great. It should be well attended. I'm expecting at least 50,000-60,000 people to be in that stadium to watch, like last time. And just it's great to get, all those players out and just into the U.S. And I know that Premier League, I know La Liga are also trying to get more fans looking at their teams. I know with a lot of teams taking American players, trying to be like, look, we have an American too, watch us, after watching Christian Pulisic leave U.S. to go to Dortmund, then go to Chelsea, and watch how Dortmund and Chelsea both had a big burst of American fans watching their teams. A lot of people are like, let's do that too, because Americans have money and they like the sport somewhat.
I mean, Premier League pulls big numbers over here.
It really does, and that's because it's the American mindset of like, I want the best, and Premier means best. This other league, La Liga, sure, it's good, but it doesn't have Premier. Serie A does not have Premier. Premier means the best. So I want it to be the best. And it's English, it means it's 100% the best. And they've put so much money into it. The Premier League, in terms of money, here's how crazy it is. Every other European league, when they win the Champions League, like, they make a fair sum of money. But that Champions League money is like what a mid-table Premier League team would take in at the end of the year. So, like, while winning the Champions League means a lot to English clubs, like, financially, it's like, okay, teams getting relegated make more than some teams in the Champions League. Like, that's how much some revenue is for the league. It's entirely insane. So bringing them over to Comerica to play is nice. And before anyone asks, why don't they go to Ford Field? Those players don't play on turf for many reasons, but the main one is they just don't want to play on turf, and they will not play on turf.
Top soccer players, I don't care what league, have no interest in playing on turf unless they have to.
It's why the women's national team, the U.S. national team, has not come back to Detroit, because when they came the 2 times, they played at Ford Field. And I remember hearing players audibly say, this turf feels like concrete. I do not want to play on this anymore. And they've not been back since, unless they want to play at Comerica, which I don't think they want to play in a baseball stadium. So,
but they've got a great grounds crew over at Comerica, and I wouldn't be surprised. It won't be perfect, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did a pretty good number with like the transition of that baseball diamond, because they they have an amazing grounds crew over there.
Oh, no. What I mean is, when they played at Comerica last time with PSG and Roma, no one complained about the turf. About the grass. They're like, yeah, it's kind of different because it's a baseball field. It's a bit different dimension size. You'll be mainly in the outfield, but it's the fact that like it's grass. So it's like grass is grass. Bad grass is better than decent turf. This is going to sound really bad, but I'm excited to see Comerica Park filled for this event.
Yeah, it might be like the first time this year, right? I am looking forward to it. I'm going to a game this week. I'll be sure to report back on that, because I think some people have started the conversation now with the age of Comerica Park. Is it time for a refresh? And I haven't looked at it this year, so I'm going to poke around a little bit and be like, and obviously not a replace. We've spent too much on like Comerica Park. We don't need to. But is it time to do a little bit of an improve? I've heard so many people say that, so I'm going to keep my eyes out for that. So I'm excited about this. I hope that we get the chance to go. I hope that listeners get the chance to go to this. This is, if you love soccer, this is going to be something you're going to want to check out. A little bit of local soccer before we go. I want to start with the Detroit City women's team, because the attendance was more than 4,700 for the opening women's match against Flint. And I think that is wonderful for the women's game. I hope that, the like strong numbers continue. The game was 0-0, but it was the kind of game that you kind of expect out of a Dwayhe club. And you were mentioning that. And so kind of explain why that is.
Yeah. To start, and this is going to sound terrible, and this is not a slight against the women or the men, but as long as the men continue to just be as bad as they've been, the women's team will be decently attended because people want to see winners. And last week, Flint City beat AFC Ann Arbor 5-1. Very high-powered offense. And they came in here, played against a very disciplined, styled, the way he coached team, which is the ball moves quickly. Position-wise, people stay in their positions. People play hard defense. They move the ball quickly and up. Like, none of this long ball, maybe a few long passes, but most of it is like we play quick, we get the ball up, and we move and we press. We move and we press. The ball goes up, we move up. We get our chances, we create chances on net. Maybe we don't score, but we create chances. So that's the type of ball I want to see from a team. Any team that I support or any team I watch, I want to see them create chances. Maybe you don't score. Maybe you have 3 games where you don't score, but you have like 12 chances. Cool. That works for me. That's fine. To see them almost hit 5,000 is also refreshing. I know most people are excited about the women's team coming back in. I wish more people would be more excited about it because they're going to be really good. If you're holding teams we still get to see them play against Midwest United, who typically routinely house most teams in this region. If they can hold them to a low-scoring game, I think they have a chance to actually make it to the national playoff level, because Midwest United's really, really, really good. They have a few players who've gone from there to go play professionally in the U.S., professionally in England, etc. They're like a springboard for talent.
And, we'll check in with them throughout the season, because I think that it's something, and it's just a cool story to see women's soccer succeed so well here in Metro Detroit. The men's side, I don't know what to say. I don't even know where to start. That was painful. That was a 5-1 drubbing. Tampa Bay is clearly back. Like they're the powerhouse that we expected them to be. By the way, I'll also mention that Memphis is getting themselves back into form too. It looks like now at this point of the season, we know the teams that have been able to kind of shake off their early doldrums, and Detroit City has not. I don't even know where to begin, except that was poor.
Yeah, what happened this last game with Detroit losing to Tampa Bay 5-1 is what I expected to happen the first time they played. And I've talked to my sources at Tampa Bay who are like, well, we're still trying to sort some things out. Like our defense has been kind of there, but our offense has not really been, as proficient as normal. But like I told everyone, all of my sources who are like, oh, Detroit's going to figure it out. And I'm like, this year what Detroit has done is they play a team, and after Detroit plays a team and loses to them, or just plays them, period, the team that they played figures out something, and then all of a sudden they go on a little mini run. El Paso is having a much better season. San Diego still staying near the top. Same with Sacramento. But Tampa Bay turned things around. After this game, they're on a little bit of a winning streak. And yeah, they fully busted Detroit's back lineup. Of the 4 of the 5 goals were goals where no one was marked. And that's the part that like people are like, well, it's just, figure it out. I'm like, no, like that's not a coaching thing. That's a player thing. On the first goal, JJ Williams a ball got crossed into the box, got hit back in. JJ Williams was left alone. Second goal, someone ran towards the net. Steve Carroll left to go protect the goal line and left JJ Williams by himself. Third goal, Charlie Dennis literally was left alone, and then he put Nate in a blender with a little juke move and then crossed the ball into the net by himself. Fourth goal, which was a first half hat trick for JJ Williams. He got in front of Steve, and people were more looking to complain about an offside call than actually stop the ball from going in the net. The only goal that actually was like a goal where someone was in place was the fifth and final goal where Dayon Harris had a chance to shoot, and it deflected off the back of Steve's heel, but hit the bottom corner of the net anyways. That's the one goal where you're like, okay, someone's in the way. They took that goal. Goals where you take them from people is one thing, but goals where you give them away and you leave people open, like that's a problem. And at this point now, Detroit is statistically the worst team in the league. Like before we were saying it like, oh, they're the worst team because no, like, they scored the least amount of goals. They've tied for lowest goal differential. Their defense is not the worst defense in the league. Surprisingly, there are teams that are higher than them on the standings who have worse defenses. Charleston Battery's near the top of the table with like a negative goal differential. I'm not really sure what's up with that, but
I mean, they did get shellacked. Like Charleston had a bad night this weekend against San Antonio, who we'll talk about this in a minute, is coming to Detroit.
You know what? That actually makes sense. 7-0 for San Antonio over Charleston. That would make sense why their goal differential is so wacky. That slipped my mind for some reason. The preview for San Antonio game against Detroit, help.
Well, fans need some hope, man, because this is bleak. The thing is about that Tampa game that was so hard to watch is we looked like gassed, tired children chasing after people way older than us.
Tampa Bay humidity will do that to you. But I know people need hope for this game. This is not the game for that. This is the game where, for all the Marvel fans, where Thanos gets all the Infinity Stones and he's about to snap. This is not a hope time. Like, this is a team that has one of the best defenses. Of the best 10 center backs in the league, San Antonio has 3 of them. 3 of them. One of them is a perennial MVP candidate every single year, Mitchell Tainter. They have one of the best offensive systems in terms of getting people involved in scoring. Maybe they don't have someone who scores 20 goals a season, but they have a lot of guys who score 8, 7, 8, 9 goals in a year. So they get the ball around, and they because they have a really great defense and a really good keeper, they can just press you the entire game until you make mistakes. And that's how they beat you, is they press you until you make mistakes and they capitalize. And this is why they always get to the final. This is why they always get to the semifinals, kind of like Louisville and Tampa Bay. They have a system. They're in a market where could they have a professional team that's an MLS? For sure. But San Antonio fans are happy to be in the second division. They have the Spurs. They have the same color scheme as the Spurs. It's very much a very big community-oriented team. And they're going to come down here. Everyone's like, well, last time they played against San Antonio, they only lost 1-0. That was the first game of the season last year. That was Detroit's first game, and they're kind of still shocking people. They're not shocking anybody anymore.
No, Detroit's been figured out.
Yeah, they've been figured out. And a team like Tampa Bay will fix it and capitalize. And this is not a game where it's like, we need some hope. Look towards the next game. The hope is that this is only 90 minutes long. That's the hope. I can't give you anything more positive than that because this team is very good. And after coming off of a 5-1 loss, I don't think they're gonna lose 5-0 again or 5-1 or 6-0. I don't think they're gonna lose that badly again. But I don't think they get a real shot on goal. The shot on goal they did have, that was a goal by Lei Diop, which was an amazing free kick. He whipped it something fierce. You can't count on that. I mean, Lei has 2 goals in the regular season, which is great, but it makes him the leading scorer for the team, which is not good with 2 goals 10 games in. That's very not awesome. But you can't count on a free kick goal every game. That's just not how this sport works.
Is this how the team's going to be the rest of the year? Are there changes that can be made? I have a few thoughts about this. I think without the MLS team, 2 teams, we would have seen this in the expansion year. I kind of wish we had, because then people would be acculturated and accustomed to the fact, and I'm going to get hate mail for this, but the USLC is a real league, and the USLC has teams with backing, with systems, with dollars, and their priority is to win. And I think that we have to readjust our look as fans and what we need to do in order to compete at this level, because right now we're not we're not competing. Like, this is embarrassing.
Well, it's not just those things you mentioned, but it has teams that have backing and systems and all that, and they have people who are content to stay in those teams, stay in this league. No one's asking when San Antonio's getting an MLS team. No one's asking when Louisville's getting an MLS team. No one's asking when Tampa Bay's getting an MLS team. No one is really asking about most of the tops. Like Sacramento and San Diego, sure, that's anomalies. That's different. But the top remaining teams always in the league, no one's like, when are we getting next? When are we going up? When are we going up? They're like, no, we have a team here that we're going to put money behind and financially back and be happy to have in this league right here. We're okay with that. We are happy and we will stay right here. So you can afford to build and put roots down and go from that point going forward, because you're not always looking like, okay, what's the next step forward? What's the next step forward? What's the next step? Where a lot of people who are fans of Detroit City FC are like, well, okay, when are we going to MLS? What's next here? Put your roots down, man. Take your shoes off. You just got home. You can't be looking at to go to work like the next day when literally you just got home 20 minutes ago. That makes no sense. I don't want to say NISA's not a real league, but in terms of like the USL having its history and being around the way it is, and seeing NISA just kind of have teams join and then halfway through the year stop being financially solvent. Comparatively, the championship is very much a real league, and NISA is very much working its way through the amateur professional status.
A friend of the show put it out this way, and I want to run this by you to see what you think. It's that when you haven't, it's a difference between being pro and amateur, and we're going to count at NISA as, although like people got paid, the culture there is still very amateur, just as you elucidated, right? Teams are in and out, blah, 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 right? It's a very amateur culture. In the amateur world, players will come to you because of attention. They will come because they're playing the passion of the game, and they know that their career may go up, but this might be the most that they do. So a bunch of excited fans and a relatively great facility compared to what they were playing in, like, and all of the adulation and attention, that's going to attract some really great players at that level. At this level, you have people who the clock is ticking on their professional careers, that they need to make as much money as they can, that they need to make sure that their impact is as quick as it can. You know, it's a different game than an amateur game. And so the expectations are different, and what players are looking for is different, and the resources required to do that is different. And that transition is a jarring transition. I think that with the first season being kind of the way it was with the teams that were in there, I think it lulled people into a sense of what the league is. But you and I have been watching the USLC. You watch a lot more soccer than I do, but I have been aware of it, all those other things. I've traveled to other USLC teams. I've talked with other USLC media. This is nothing like NISA at all.
I mean, this is not a way to sound like I'm punching down on anybody at all, but this is the way that I can help lay it out so people can understand a bit better. DCFC's big out-of-country signing was Ben Morris, who played for a team in Sweden in like the second or third division and played for Ipswich, which is not the top division in England. Tampa Bay brought back Forrest Lasso, who played, and although they got relegated, he played for a top-tier team in the same country, in Sweden. Other teams bring in players who play at top-tier countries, albeit in smaller countries, but they're the top level, whatever. They can afford to spend money, or they're sending players off to other teams for X amount of money. Colorado Switchbacks sent off Haji Berry for $1 million to a team in Egypt. Like, they're making moves that are like, the numbers are like decent sized, and Detroit's not there yet. And like, they're still adjusting to being in the league. It's their second year. So like, to expect them to like acquiesce and be really good at it really quickly doesn't really make much sense. I know sports fans sometimes aren't the most rational. They're like, oh, I want this now. You just joined it, win it. I know you just happen to get in the league, win the league now. You didn't win the league? Why? What? But like, you got to understand it takes some time to get there. And I know Louisville wasn't built overnight. Neither was Tampa Bay. Neither was the Rowdies. Neither was San Diego. Neither was Sacramento. All these teams took their lumps at first before they got to be as good as they are. Albeit some teams have longer histories, like the Rowdies go back to like the 70s, back to where they wore those long hoop stocks that I really want to find somewhere. So like, they have some work in front of them, obviously. They need to stay in the league a bit longer and figure that out. it's going to be jarring for a minute. And yeah, had the MLS 2 teams not been in the league last year, would have realized this last year, because right now they're on pace to score maybe about around the same amount of goals, if not less. But they're going to give up more goals than last year. That's for sure. Because the math is just not mathing right now for them not to do that.
I want to be clear. I don't envy the job of those owners. Like, I don't envy their job. This is hard. Like, we did that crowd raise for $1 million or whatever and sold that out for the club, and it was absolutely wonderful. But like, $1 million doesn't get you that far in the USLC, considering how much resources you need for so many things ongoing to be the kind of team, like an equivalent team up at that level, right? It's one thing to be where we're at or kind of in the middle bottom of the table. But if you want to go top to top, that requires a lot more resources, and things will have to change.
You could use that $1 million to sign your entire playing staff. You could use it for that, but you're not going to get the quality players if you use $1 million to sign 19, 20 players. Like, you're not going to get the best players because that's not enough money for all of those players, and that's just how that is. And I think when more people realize that $1 million has to be broken up in many different ways, as opposed to just going in like lump sums one place or another place. Like if there's $1 million and it's like, all right, we use this $1 million, we signed 3 or 4 players. Okay. But it's not like that. It's like this $1 million is going to sign a few players. It's also going to fix up this and fix up this. And by when you get back to look at it, it's like $63,000. And it's like, okay, well, what do we do with this? Like how do we take this and do something more? And it's like, well, we don't have any more. So we just have to stretch what we have. And that's part of the reason why you have a lot of people within the organization doing more than one job, because they have to stretch certain things. So when people are talking, well, we need to get this guy out of here and get this, you're not just replacing one person most times. You're replacing like 3. So I think people need to realize that and understand, like, they're still growing. They're still trying to be the DCFC they were before. But like, it's going to take some time for them to get back there because they have a lot. They have a lot of work they need to take care of and get through. So people should, I hate to say give it some time, but like, give it some time. No one likes to go from being, big fish in a small pond to vice versa. But like, that's kind of what's happening right here.
All right. Well, with that, I am looking forward to getting back to Keyworth and checking out things and watching that game regardless, and looking forward to Ford Field as well. And then, of course, I know we'll get some Tigers talk in there too. They're playing better than expected, Fletcher, so we'll get into that in the next couple weeks too.
Definitely, for sure.
All right. With that, I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Fletcher Sharpe.
As always, dailydetroit@gmail.com with any feedback you've got. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.